Hi. I'm going to show you now a sample assessment material for a practical IGCSE ICT exam, and this one is from 2011, and the activity is number 2, using Spreadsheet software. The paper gives me this information. TrainTravellers keeps information about payment for holidays in spreadsheet files. Open the spreadsheet tour bookings, which is here. Now the spreadsheet shows that for this tour, 5 groups have booked all of the available places. The price for an adult is stored in B2, which is over here. The price for a child is in B3. Now they tell us for the first activity, enter a formula in D6, which is here, which uses an absolute cell reference to calculate the cost for the adults booked in the group led by Robert Meadows. Now, why do we have to put an absolute cell reference? Well, the reason is that the prices are up here, and when we're going to replicate the formula, it won't know where to get the prices from unless we say that it's an absolute cell reference. Okay, so we're going to start calculating. We have to put the equal symbol, like usually. We have the adult price, which is 1500, and we're going to multiply it with the number of the adults in the group. To insert the absolute cell reference, I select B2, because that's this cell here, and I'm going to press F4 on my keyboard. This inserts a dollar symbol into the cell reference, and if it doesn't work on your keyboard, then just use Shift and the number that gives for the dollar symbol. When this is done, you press Enter, and here we have the formula, and now we can replicate it down. But let's see what they say next in the exam. Enter a formula in E6, which is here, which will calculate the cost for the children booked in this group. Replicate the formula in columns D and E for all 5 groups. Okay, so we have to do the same thing here. So it's the equal symbol. We're going to get the price for the children, which is 1000. We're going to multiply it with how many children, which are 4. We're going to insert the absolute cell reference. So I select it, press F4 on the keyboard, and press Enter. Now I can replicate the cells down, and the same thing for the D column. The next task is enter a formula in F12 which will calculate the total cost for all groups. Cell F12 is over here. Now we need the total for all the groups. So we put the equal symbol, we're going to sum, and we're going to open the bracket because we're going to sum all these numbers, the total numbers. We're going to close the bracket, press Enter, and here we got the correct total sum. Now, the next task is to label this cell. Now, we're not going to label this cell, but label the cell next to it to tell that it's the total. Now, as it just says label this cell, we're going to have to find out what would be a good name, and total amount or total cost would be perfect. And you can have a colon, not needed though. And that's it for the first paper of this spreadsheet exam. Now it tells us that we have to make sure the page setup is in landscape. So we can go to page layout, orientation is in landscape. Show the grid lines and row and column headers. We can see here grid lines, yes, it's selected. And we've got, if we click also here sheet options, it will show us that row and column headings is selected and grid lines, just as asked. Make sure the columns are wide enough to show the complete formula. Now that means we have to show the formula view. That can be done by clicking the Formulas tab and clicking on Show Formulas. As you can see, it goes on 2 papers, and we only wanted to fit on 1 sheet. So we're going to double click on the borders to get this onto 1 sheet. Now that's perfect. And that's it for this task, which gave total 6 marks. And the next activity is to use another spreadsheet. And it says here, optional activities are available during the holiday. These must be paid for before the holiday. If the total cost of these activities is more than 500, a discount is given. Okay, so we're going to carry on with this spreadsheet. Group leaders send details of requirements. TrainTravellers then send an invoice. Open the file activities, and it should look like this. Okay, so we're going to minimize this one. It's done. Open activities. Children are not allowed to drive a train. For other activities, the child price is 75% of the adult price. Enter a formula in E2, so we know we have to put a formula here, to calculate the price per child for the museum visit. Now we know the price is 75% of the adult ticket, so we're going to put an equal symbol here. We're going to click on D2, which is the adult price, and multiply it with 75%. Press enter. Here we got the fee then for the child, and we are able to replicate it down, but let's see what they tell us to do. Copy this down for the other appropriate activities and enter 0 in E5. So yes, we do replicate it. Here there are no children, so of course we have to put here 0, like it tells us. The total cost now needs to be calculated for the activities. In F2, enter a formula to calculate the total cost for the first activity. So we go into cell F2. And then we have to copy this down for each activity. Okay, so how are we going to do this? We know the child price, we know the adult price, we know the number of children and adults. So we're going to create the formula in here. That's going to be done like this. We're going to, of course, put the equal symbol like usual. And we're going to do B2, which is here. We're going to multiply it. This is the adults to the adult price. And then we're going to close the bracket. Let me just open it also. And we're going to add it up with the children, or the number of children, times the price for the children. Close the bracket and press enter. Now we know the total cost, and we can replicate the formula down as they told us to do. And then the next activity is to enter a suitable label for this column, which must be then total cost. Total cost. And then it says in F7, which is over here, enter a formula which calculates the total cost of optional activities. So we're going to sum up the cells. We could do that by selecting the F7 here, and then we're going to press the Home tab, and we're going to go to Auto Sum. Now we've got the total price. Put a name and date on the invoice is the next thing it asks us to do. So we're going to, and then it gives more directions. Insert 3 new rows above row 1. Okay, we have to put 3 more rows above this row. How we do it is we select the first 3 rows, because the amount you select is the amount that will be added. We're going to right click and say insert, and 3 rows will be added above. In A1, enter 2, so I go to A1. I have to write 2 space Mr. space R space Meadows. Now this is his name, and we have to make sure that we write it exactly like it shows it on the paper. Because if you don't have capital letters, or there's a spelling or grammar mistake, then you will miss a mark. So you get 1 mark to write this correctly, or enter it correctly. Now next thing, in A2, which is right beneath, enter a function that will give the current date, do not show the time. Now there are formula that have to be, or that can be used, and in this case they're asking for a formula because they say function. So we go to date and time, and we select today. We say OK. This is getting the date from the computer, which is the 6th of the 3rd, 2014, so it's correct, and this is the formula that we will see if we say show formulas. Okay, today. Now we're going to close it. The next thing they tell us to do is if the total cost of optional activities is more than £500, a 10% discount is given. Enter a formula in C12. Okay, this means we have to do an if formula. So we're going to go to cell C12 and enter a formula that calculates and shows the cost of optional activities. This should use the if statement. If the total cost of the activities is more than 500, it should deduct 10% from the total cost and display the new cost. Otherwise, it must show the total cost. Okay, so we do this with the equal symbol. We're going to write if, which gives us the if formula. I'm going to open a bracket and it says logical test. And the logical test was if the total amount is more than 500, then something will happen. So as you can see here, we've got a semicolon, which means we have to insert the semicolon. Then we can say what happens if this is true. Now, if this is true, the person will get 10% discount, which means we have to multiply 0.90 with the total amount. So we can write it 0.90 times this amount. But if this is not true, means if the value is less than 500, then nothing will happen. The same amount will come up. So we're going to have to put the semicolon also again. And now just click on the cell because it's going to appear this amount if it's not more than 500. Now we close the bracket, we press enter, and we get the right value. Now there's one thing that I would like to show you. If we write the formula like this, and there's a comma here, then we have to put a comma. This depends on your regional settings. So always look at this help text here to see if it's a semicolon or a comma. Also, there's another way of putting the if formula, and some use that rather, which is here the function. You can write if, press enter. And if you double click or press OK, you will get this window. And some find it easier to write the formula in here. Logical test, and you would put here the total value, which is this one, or the cell reference. You can also click here and it will open, and you can click on the cell and then carry on, and value if true and value if false. Okay. Now, in the end, it says enter the label optional activities less discount in A12. So we go to cell A12, and there we have to say optional activities less discount, and then a colon. And they show this text in bold, so I'm gonna press now Control B, which is the same as going to home and press here B. And now you've got everything that's needed, and this was 13 marks for this part of the exam. It also says make sure the page is in landscape, show the grid lines, and make sure the columns are wide enough to show the complete formula. So you'll have to show this in formula view. If they wanted it in data view, you might want to put all the prices, as you can see here, you got adult price, child price, and total cost, as it should be in pounds. You can change it here easily. More account formats, we select currency, and we'll find the English UK, which is here. Okay. Now you've got, and I should have done the same for these two values, but an easy method is also just click on the cell. We want the same format, so I click the format painter, same format here also, and it's done. It was quick. If they tell you to format this spreadsheet, of course we would put all the totals in bold. We could put some type of shading, we can put borders. For example, here would be clever to have two lines here underneath, like it's not the top one, just the bottom double border, because then we know that this is the total. And yeah, there are some things that you can do if you find them good for formatting, like shading. but they usually say formatted, put a border, shading. So then it is up to you to try to find the nice shading, and so it's easy to read the table. Okay, that's it for now. I hope this was clear and simple, and feel free to comment on any improvements or additional features that you are struggling with. Bye bye.